I have chosen the story Choosing an Elephant, and it's about a white man serving the empire even though he is actually against it. He serves it as being a police officer, and because he serves it, he therefore is a part of it, and he also experiences all of the rage from the natives towards the empire. And one day he stands in a dilemma when an elephant goes into must and then races through all of the uh, poor part of the village he lives in, and he has to decide if the elephant should be shot or not. The genre of the story is actually up for discussion because it could both be an essay and it could also be a short story. It could be an essay because it is based on the experiences of George Orwell, who is the author, and he starts the story with actually presenting the real plot line. So the story is some sort of flashback to his young life. It is written under the circumstances of the imperialism, and it is written in 1936. So it is from a first person point of view, and this story takes place in Moulmein in Lower Burma, um, and at the eyes end of the town, it seems rather wealthy because they can afford a police station where, and that is where he works. But at the poor end of the town, it is described with it was a very poor quarter, a labyrinth of squalid bamboo huts thatched with palm leaf winding all over a steep hillside, and that is from page 112, lines 13 to 14. So you can argue that he lives in a town, that Burma is a town, or Moulmein is a town, with a large diversity between the people living there. So moving on to a characterization of the eye. The story is told in past tense, and the eye is a white police officer. He engages really much in the community by, for example, playing football with the natives. And the eye in the now eye describes the past eye, the young eye, with being ill educated. The eye has a very ambivalent relation to the Burmese people, who's the natives. And he says, for example, theoretically and secretly, of course, I was all for the Burmese and all against their oppressors, the British. That is on page 110, lines 23 to 24. But he also describes him with, all I knew was that I was stuck between my hatred of the empire I served and my rage against the evil-spirited little beasts who tried to make my job impossible, on page 111, lines 4 to 9. So what these two symbols from the text really describes is a man who wants to care for the natives, but they make it hard for him because they are so mean to him. And their behavior is, of course, also understandable because of the situation. So, in addition to this, you can add a quote on page 115, lines 2 to 14. And here he describes that he feels very caught in this situation as being a part of the empire and to serve the empire. That is not a thing he likes to do, and he does not feel comfortable. So speaking of literary devices, you can talk about symbolism, and one symbol that is very crucial for the story or for the essay is the elephant, and it could symbolize three very opposing things. Actually, it could symbolize India, because a lot of nations has tried to colonize India, and India still stands as itself, so it cannot be killed like the protagonist tries to kill the elephant several times, but it dies after a long time. It could also symbolize the empire, because at last the elephant dies, and what the protagonist does not know is that the empire is actually dying at the time this dilemma with the elephant happens. So you can also argue that it is a symbol of the empire, because it dies at last like the empire did. It could at last be a symbol of the natives, because the natives, they just act out from their nature, and so does the elephant in Must, and that is why it rages out. So that is the three things this elephant could symbolize. So the two themes I've chosen to focus on in this story is imperialism and psychic prisoning. And imperialism, you see that very clearly in the relation between the white superior and the natives. And psychic prisoning, I would actually like to talk about that in talking about the message. So leading on to the message, which is also related to the characterization, the message says that it was not only the natives who led under this imperialism, it was also very much the white men who had to serve it, because they had to withhold this facade, that this strong facade that they were ruling. And that leads us back to the psychic prisoning as a theme, because as the natives were sometimes kept physic prisoners, the white men were psychic prisoners, so they were just imprisoned in their heads. To draw parallels, you can draw to the colonial ideology list with the white and black as races. The I is, of course, the black with racial purity, and he has a career. And the blacks are living in bamboo huts and are very poor, and they just sometimes seem not human, because they just want the elephant to be killed because they want the meat. And the white man is in doubt because he does not think it's fair to kill an elephant because of its nature. So you can also draw parallels to White Man's Burden, because the White Man's Burden also says that it was the Englishmen who had to make the great sacrifice. And this story also says that it was the Englishman who made a sacrifice, and not only the natives. But there is a big difference, and that is that the White Man's Burden, the poem, is really much for the imperialism, and this story is really much against it. So, yeah.